into you. Woo! Not heard this for a little while. This sounds good.
The 7 stages of grief during coronavirus. Acceptance. You come to the realization that the world isn't limited to the amount of suffering you're personally capable of. And until every person is no longer hurting, every child no longer beaten, every future no longer stolen, there will be suffering. And there will be an obligation to alleviate that suffering. And there will be an obligation to atone, whether it's the sins of our fathers, or the sins of our ancestors, or the sins of our compatriots. Isn't it funny also that you don't have to believe in God to believe in sin? But it's different than sin. Sins are supposed to be forgivable by this great being with a capacity to forgive that we humans don't necessarily have. You begin to appreciate that some things are not forgivable. That once you've woken up to the understanding that vulnerable people literally die for their lives, there is no alternative but to decide to care. So you resolve to care. You realize that vulnerability is not synonymous with weakness, that all of us are vulnerable in some way, and that some days we're weaker than most, and that some of us don't have that option. So you grieve for those who lost their lives, and you grieve for the ones that you lost too, not just during this crisis, but during every one before it. It takes a toll on you. So you lean into it more and watch the beautiful cracks of your ruins spread like a mosaic. Your belief in humanity is the mortar. The things you tell yourself to sleep better are the tile. You then run out of tile, so you tell yourself that it's someone else's job, just not your job, and not anyone you knows, not anyone in your immediate circles, not anyone tangentially related either in case the fallout spills on your day. You realize that forgiveness is not a requirement for atonement, and you feel a bit at ease until someone says again it's someone else's job to apologize for everything awful in this world. And it's the people most capable of forgiveness that are the only ones made to atone. So you lean on their forgiveness, both for the things we've caused and the things we haven't. You then run out of tile. You realize how mortal you are. And it's not in the same way as when you fall and bust your knee as a kid and bleed for the first time, you realize how mortal you are. And it's not in the same way as when you cut your hand as an adult, see that lump on the doctor's screen, or hear your child say that they hate you for the first time, you realize how mortal you are. And it's not in the same way as when you're a person of color and someone is killed for no reason over and over again, you realize how mortal you are. And it's not in the same way as when you're a person of color and politicians say something dehumanizing again, or it's your boss or your professor or your neighbor this time, you realize how mortal you are. And it's not in the same way as when you're marginalized in any way and you are born or get sick or persist. You realize how mortal you are. It's in a different way, a way where the burden is shared by everyone, and by some much more than others, and by each of us much more than our past selves. And there isn't a lesson in kindergarten for what to do when things break, except to apologize. And that's no use right now because you're not sure who to apologize to, whether it's your body or it's other people, or it's the healthcare workers like your own mother, or it's the postal workers, or it's the checkout people, or it's the gig driver that takes you to the hospital when you start exhibiting an arrhythmia, or it's your father as he consoles you, or it's the pieces of fabric that you twist and wring and tear when you're worried until only it's a ghost of a fabric, or it's your country until only it's a ghost of a social fabric. So you lie in bed instead and realize how mortal you are. And this poem is also about blackness. So you dig deep into the reserves of tile, commissioning old pieces of glass, bone, conviction, or something more durable, and you dig and weld and build and weld and dig and weld until there's nothing left. Some things that haven't been stopped by COVID-19. Wars, domestic violence, famine, pestilence, displacement, our will to live. The 7 stages of grief during coronavirus. Acceptance. You come to the realization that the world isn't limited to the amount of suffering you're personally capable of. And until every person is no longer hurting, every child